And we now begin the inauguration of the session with lighting of lamp. So may I request the respective guests.
Just in front of me.
Yeah.
Good morning, all of you, and welcome to the Foreign Correspondents Club of South Asia here in Delhi. This Young Dialogue 2.0 finally getting into action. With us, the first session that we'll be talking about is to do with global horizons addressing current concerns in an evolving world. We have with us Honorable Member of Parliament Shri Sujit Kumarji, Dr. Rajiv Nayanji, Senior Research Fellow and MPI IDSA, Mr. Kefi Fabian, former Indian diplomat, and we have online, of course, with Mr. Abdul Hakim Idris, Executive Director of Center for Yoga Studies, Mr. Vahan Zanoen, author and global energy consultant and anti-trafficking advocate, Mr. Adil Brar, journalist and writer. So Global Horizons addressing current concerns in a evolving world. From a global horizon perspective, there are certain major challenges and issues facing the planet today, take into account the rapidly changing global landscape, including technological advancements, geopolitical shifts, climate changes, and economic uncertainties, with a focus on finding solutions and proactive strategies to navigate these complexities. Global issues are often intertwined and require holistic approaches to address their complex nature. It encompasses a wide range of topics like international security, climate action, economic inequality, maritime security, artificial intelligence-led cybersecurity, and emerging technologies. We have reached a situation where collaborative solutions through international cooperation, government partnership, business cooperation are required to tackle some of global problems. Negotiations to resolve a few of the world's most persistent conflicts will no doubt continue this year also. Remember that each carry grave geopolitical and humanitarian consequences. While the international community is focused on securing ceasefire, some conflicts still persist. In this context, it will be interesting to note the geopolitical dynamics of South Asia as well. It will be interesting to watch how the region adjusts to a second Donald Trump government and how it is affected by the ongoing conflicts. We are witnessing unstable governments, border issues, economic troubles, and new governments in this region. In this scenario, India's role in evolving in the region is of utmost importance. We cater to a wait and watch policy, but sometimes the images in front of us change very rapidly. Henceforth, certain steps, as felt by the government, need to be taken with promptness. The Indian government, in this regard, has always led from the front. However, we need to also keep a keen focus on anticipating and preparing for the future trends and challenges, because they come with just a whisper. In our country's context, relations with other countries in the region needs to be discussed and deliberated upon, keeping in mind the economic flow, power assertion, etc. The global term is slowly getting regionalized. Remember this. The more we think global, we need to look next door. Some diplomatic mathematics, as I put it, need to be looked into. So here we open this session, and will kindly request Shujit Kumar sir to please come over and address. Or you can address from there.
He said, "Okay, there is no microphone there. There is no microphone there."
Good morning, everyone. Let me begin by complimenting and thanking Red Lantern Analytica, Abhishek, and his entire team for putting together this Young Dialogue 2.0. And I'm told that this dialogue was to be held in person, physically in Arunachal, but I think due to some developments that didn't happen, and we are meeting. This is an abridged and shorter version of the larger dialogue that was planned, but nevertheless, thank you, Abhishek, and sincere compliments for taking the effort of putting together this dialogue. My greetings to all the co-panelists. The topic that I've been asked to talk about is the global concerns and the evolving global order, and India's role in that evolving global order. I'm my Indian and geopolitics, and because of the fact that I'm a member of the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Affairs, I do a bit of study on foreign policy, and I will articulate some of the views that I have today based on my limited understanding. One of my favorite authors is Charles Dickens, and one of my favorite books is A Tale of Two Cities. Many of you might have read the book or heard of the book. And there's a favorite quote of one of my all-time favorite quote from that book. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. Right now, why do I quote Charles Dickens, and why do I use this platform to talk of a quote from a book? And because I believe that it's genuinely the best of times. It's genuinely the spring of hope, because there was never a time in human history when so many people have been lifted out of poverty. In India alone, in last 10 years, 25 crore Indian citizens have been lifted out of poverty. Now, one can argue the definition of poverty. Niti Aayog might have a different index, World Bank might have a different index, But it's a fact that large number of people across the globe have come out of sustenance level poverty. And World War II is a distant memory. Yes, there are conflicts across the globe, but nothing like a World War One or World War II like situation. And the world has become multipolar. We don't have a Cold War like situation. But on the other hand, every coin has two sides. And on the other hand, if I would play the devil's advocate, is it really the spring of hope, or is it the winter of despair? Is it the worst of time? Because every day we see, you scan the newspapers and you see stories of conflicts, whether it's Ukraine, Russia, whether it's the never-ending conflict in the Middle East. You hear stories about the not stories, actually these are facts, the alarming impact of climate change, extreme weather events, the recent forest fire, wildfire in California is a grim reminder of what is in store for us. Because this is Red Lantern Analytica, I must talk about China. When World War II happened, we said never again will there be a genocide in the world. But we know what's going on in Xinjiang, we know what's going on in Tibet. At least 10 million people are in concentration camp like situation in Xinjiang and in Tibet. So you have two extremes. On the one hand, you have a prosperous and peaceful world. On the other hand, you have a conflict-ridden, climate change impacted and world. And also you have actors like China, which are hell-bent on imposing their belligerent and expansionist designs on the world. Now, in such a world, what is the role of India? And I may not be far from the truth when I say that India is a shining star in the global horizon today. India has emerged as one of the most respected nations in the global order. Okay. And the attitude of the world towards India has also changed dramatically in the last decade. And I'll give you a couple of examples, maybe 5 or 6 examples to justify what I've just said. One is, if we talk of India's growing influence, then obviously we have to talk of India's foreign policy doctrine under PM Modi, because I've been talking about the last decade. So what we call the foreign policy doctrine, or PM Modi's doctrine. And the first and foremost thing is, which comes to my mind, is the strategic autonomy that we are able to follow. We, after our independence and during the Cold Wars, and we have experts, Mr. Fabian is here, who is a distinguished former diplomat. For a long time, we believed in the philosophy of non-alignment. And we were the founding member of NAM. But I mean, it was more of a philosophy than a reality. But if you see today, we are really able to uphold and follow strategic autonomy in the truest sense. Prime Minister Modi is able to talk to Putin and able to talk to Zelensky in the same evening. I don't think there are many world leaders who would be able to do so. He's able to talk to the Israelis as he's able to talk to the Palestinians. So India has been able to craft a distinct axis of influence, neither aligned towards the West nor aligned towards any other grouping. And it has actually emerged as a pole in its own right in an emerging global order. So that is the strategic economy which we are talking about. India has been able to give to the world many doctrines, the Sagar doctrine, which has brought together Sagar meaning ocean in Hindi or Sanskrit, and India has been able to, through this doctrine, build better partnerships with countries in the Indian Ocean region. Act East policy is another framework that comes to my mind. Building better equations with countries of Southeast Asia. And we have our friend from Taiwan here, and they have the new southbound policy. And I always say that it's a beautiful confluence of the NSP of Taiwan and the Actish policy of India. Neighborhood first policy. So for the first time, I guess, in post-independent Indian history, we have been able to maintain our strategic autonomy, emphasize our strategic autonomy in the truest sense. The second aspect of this Modi doctrine is the leadership in global governance architecture. I would like you to recall G20. Never was there a G20 event that generated so much of optimism, that generated so much of excitement as was India's G20 leadership. It was actually a pivotal moment in India's international standing. And not only G20, today India's positioning in BRICS or Quad or any other multilateral grouping is probably unparalleled in its history. Third position which I would like to talk of is the leadership in Global South. I think of all the successes that we have had in our foreign policy in the recent years in the evolving global order and India's role in this evolving global order, I think the biggest success is India's genuine or the global South's genuine acknowledgement of India's leadership, whether it is India's championing of African Union as a member of G20, and there is so much of goodwill now in Africa, and I've had the opportunity to travel to Africa at least a couple of times since then, and trust me, like the kind of goodwill Africans have for India today, and almost in every of my visits, I've been told how India has and how grateful they are to India for championing the cause of African Union to be part of G20. India has always championed that there should be better representation of the global South in climate negotiation, in trade negotiations, in all multilateral bodies. That is something which not many countries have been able to do. Net security provider. India is seen as a net security provider. Whether it is in the immediate neighborhood or global, we are the largest. We sent the largest contingent to the UN peacekeeping missions. We are, known as Vishwabandhu. In fact, the Brookings Institute calls India neighborhood's first responder. Whenever there is a calamity or a natural disaster anywhere, in our immediate neighborhood or in our not so immediate neighborhood, we are the first one to respond. Whether it's Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Nepal, you name it. And to the extent that we were one of the first countries to send aid and human resource to Turkey, and our equation with Turkey was not in the best of terms then. President Erdogan had spoken about the Kashmir issue foolishly, but still we initiated Operation Dost. Dost is friend, right? In almost all Indian languages. And immediately we sent a contingent of aid and materials and human resource to Turkey, not even a very friendly country. So we are a net security provider. We believe in humanitarian assistance and relief and response. Who can forget the Maitri diplomacy, vaccine Maitri diplomacy, during COVID? We sent vaccine to close to 100 countries when the entire world was stingy and miserly about sharing any resources, whether it was PPE kits or gloves or vaccine, because they had to first take care of their own citizens. We were the ones that sent vaccine doses to close to 100 countries, and that's why India is seen as a dependable country. We are called the pharmacy of the world, and it's not that we started doing this only during the COVID. Way back in 1993, when the AIDS drug was being sold for thousands of dollars, Cipla started manufacturing that drug and started supplying to the world at $350 a dose. So not prioritizing profit over human health. So that is the track record we have. And I will take this opportunity also to thank our Taiwanese friends. You know, they were also very, very kind in sharing their health expertise and aid to India and many other countries. And it's such a sad reality of the world order today that Taiwan is excluded from the World Health Assembly and is not a member of WHO due to pressure from China. So I must put it on record here when we are talking of health diplomacy and India's Maitrian diplomacy. I think we should acknowledge what Taiwan has, given to the world and how they came to the aid of the world during COVID, the Wuhan crisis. My fourth point would be the economic cloud that we enjoy today. We are the fifth largest economy today, almost a $4 trillion economy. In another couple of years, we'll be the third largest economy. So this is a significant source of hard power that we have today. We are able to, because of our growing economy, because of the fact that today India is growing at 6.4, 6.5. One can debate on the exact number, but it is almost double the world average. Today, the world is growing at roughly 3%, but India is growing at 6.4, 6.8. You may dispute, the exact number, but it's definitely close to that figure. And because of this growing economic cloud, we are able to extend financial assistance to many countries without any conditionality. China extends debt and loan to countries, but we all know where the countries land up in, whether it's China, Sri Lanka, or Nepal. The debt trap diplomacy, or African countries, the debt trap diplomacy of China is known to everyone. So this is why the goodwill today of India is such an all-time high, whereas the goodwill of China is at a rock bottom. And Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India, these are all successful initiatives that has helped us to attain global standing in the economic sphere. And my last point would be on India's climate leadership. Genuinely, today, Prime Minister Modi is hailed the world over as one of the greatest statesmen who is doing his utmost to avert this climate crisis, whether it's through our net zero goals, which we have articulated. 2070 is the target, or whether it is through the alliances which Prime Minister Modi has built, International Solar Alliance, the Biofuel Alliance, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. He gave the world the concept of Ek Ped Maa Ke Naam. I was in Chile 2 weeks ago, and you'd be surprised that the mayor of the city of Santiago, the capital of Chile, the mayor of city of Santiago was talking about this initiative called Ek Ped Maa Ke Naam. I mean, I was like, it was actually a very, not a funny, but like, I don't know. I mean, to hear the mayor of city of Santiago to talk of Ek Ped Maa Ke Naam, it was something which is like not so common. And then, of course, the life mission which he has given to the world. These are all articulations of our sincere effort in combating climate disaster, the ill effects of climate change. And this is why when Prime Minister Modi speaks of climate action, today the world listens, right? So I think this is an indication for me to stop, I guess. But Professor Joseph Nye gave us the concept of soft power, and I was in his class, I was a student. And, when in those days, when we talked of soft power of India, it was largely Bollywood, Indian cuisine, yoga, Ayurveda, those kind of things. But these are the elements of soft power that I'm talking of today. Our economy, soft and hard power also, of course. Economic clout, our leadership in the global south, our leadership in the climate action ecosystem. So genuinely, India has today emerged as a friend of the world in this emerging global order. And yes, there are challenges. There are challenges of climate. Of course, I mentioned about the climate change, and still there are a large number of people under the poverty line. There are geopolitical uncertainties. Still, we have this never-ending conflict in the Middle East. We have, of course, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and there are other zones. The situation in Bangladesh is grim, but and there are technological disruptions. AI, God only knows where it will lead us. So these are all uncertainties that the globe is facing, and some of them will be challenging, definitely challenging, that will shape the world and shape the future of the world. But I think I'll conclude by saying that India will play, no matter what, India will play a key role in this emerging global order. And always we talk of the 3 Ds, democracy, demography, and diversity in India. Demography, all know we are the most youthful nation on earth, and I see a lot of young minds here. Just imagine half of our population is under 25, so that's almost 700 crore. जिस देश की आबादी 140 करोड़ है और 70 करोड़ की आबादी 25 साल से कम है, you can imagine the future of that country. Demography dividend is something which all know about and talk about. Democracy, whether you agree or not, whether we are the mother of democracy or not, we are certainly the largest democracy, right? When close to 96 million voters were registered to vote, that is something which is unfathomable for most people across the globe. And diversity, of course, we know the country, unity in diversity of country, and with enabling policies, with a lot of support for startups and entrepreneurs, I think the future definitely is very, very bright for India, and India will continue to play a very distinct role. And as we grow, as we rise confidently and self-assuredly, I think the world will look at India and to provide solutions for most of the challenges. And we will certainly, I think, play the role of a friend of the world. So I guess I'll stop with that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sujit sir. Well, because of the timing perspective, we need to go to the online guests first. And there's Mr. Vahan Zanuyan from New York. He's an author, global energy consultant, and anti-trafficking advocate. Mr. Vahan? Is he? Yeah, there he is. Welcome to the Siang Dialogue 2.0, sir. Can't hear you, sir. Maybe it's to do with the mic. Can't hear you. Is it mute or what? We're not able to. So if you just pardon, just for a second. Is it worked up? Is that working? Oh, he's not.
Big geopolitical competition has changed substantially in the past several decades. Those of you out there who are remember the Cold War, which was only about 30 some years ago, there was a lot of ideological competition, there was geopolitical competition. The Soviet side was always trying to convince the world, or especially the third world, that their system is better than the capitalist system. And the American side and Western European side was trying to convince the world that no, freedom and democracy is much better than the other one. And there was a lot of geopolitical competition all over between those two major powers. Today, the main game, the main political game is basically between US and China. Between US and China, it's very interesting that the geopolitical competition has changed. It's no longer ideological. The Chinese don't care about spreading communism in Africa or in the Middle East or whatever, like the Soviets used to do. The Americans are not, especially under Trump, and I'm going to come to that, it's not a ideologically driven administration at all, which actually can be to the detriment of the world, but we'll come to that in a second. And so the competition is mostly commercial. It's commercial dominance that both the US side and the Chinese side are trying to do. Now, commercial dominance changes kind of the nature of the game in the sense that trade routes become very important. Trade routes have always been important through history, by the way, but in this kind of commercially driven geopolitical competition, trade routes become even more critical. And, until so far, basically, Americans control the sea routes. So China has focused on the land routes. That's where the whole investment in Belt and Road comes, and there were all these other projects about different routes. There is the IMEC from China, India, all the way to Europe. There are a few other proposals that one was proposed by the Turkish opposition a long time, about a year or two ago. There is a new proposal from the Armenian Prime Minister, Yerevan, about the crossroads to peace. In other words, there is a lot of concentration now on trade routes, partly because the competition is commercial. Now, by the way, this is also why the Arctic Circle has become so important. All of a sudden, the interest in Greenland and Canada is partly, okay, there are various natural earth resources in Greenland, but if you look at the map from the top and you see the Arctic Circle, and as some of the ice starts to melt and there are new sea routes being opened and available to the Russians, this is creating another major geopolitical struggle because it's all tied to the route issue. Here, in this commercial dominance, there is it kind of fits the new US president, Donald Trump. Donald Trump sees himself as a bargainer, negotiator. He gets a good deal. He's actually a ghost writer has written a book under his name about the fact of the deal. I'm sorry, there is a lot of background noise. Can we stop the background noise, please? I cannot talk when I hear all this conversation in the background. I don't know how we can resolve this, but it's very. I don't know who's hearing me, but anyway. There are two types of negotiations. Anybody who's taken negotiation class in college will know there is a distributive bargaining strategy where there's always a winner and a loser, and there is a fixed quantity of what you're negotiating or bargaining about, and someone gets it and someone loses it. Okay? Trump's negotiating and bargaining strategy is almost entirely that kind of distributive bargaining, and then this other kind is a totally different kind of bargaining, which is called integrative bargaining. The integrative bargaining is, you don't really think about winners and losers, you think about what's best for all sides bargaining, okay? Something that's very important to one side, but less to the other side. In other words, it's a political negotiating skill where everybody comes out with something, okay? There's the way. Now, in politics, especially in international politics, international relations, where the world is so integrated today, it's that integrated bargaining strategy that's going to work. The distributive bargaining strategy, which Trump likes to follow, he always likes to follow, it's not going to work very well. Okay? This is already, we're seeing a lot of this happening. Even Ukraine now is bargaining about their earth minerals versus military aid. The whole approach to the Middle East, to the Gaza problem, is just unbelievably purely transactional and commercial, and there's nothing there about human values or about anything. So this is the one point that I wanted to make about the commercial dominance strategy of global geopolitical competition that's coming up. The second is, I've already alluded to, is the transaction-driven world. I don't want to disappoint anybody in the audience who is very idealistic about global affairs, but values do not drive foreign policy. It's very simple. State interests drive foreign policy. It's always been like this, but today it's much more like this than ever. The world is much more transactional. Values once in a while come. They're very useful when politicians give speeches. They like to bring values. And sometimes when certain values happen to coincide with a policy that is driven strictly by national, and not so much national, but state interests, then it also, they come as icing on the cake. But they don't drive policy. They haven't driven policy for most of human history, but today it's even much more emphasized that we live in a transaction-driven world. In this respect, the world recognizes and respects the strong, the victorious, and the world has no patience for the weak and the defeated. And I want to come to a couple of examples, both in the South Caucasus and in the Middle East. But in this system, wars become almost necessary part of the system. I don't believe anymore in peace. Peace is a kind of pause waiting for the next war. That's what peace is in this world. Because if the world will continue like this, commercially driven and transaction, and there are winners and losers, and the strong win and the weak lose, and the strong take what they need to take, and the weak just suffer the consequences. In this kind of world, war becomes way of life. So that's the kind of world we live in. Again, I hate to disappoint the idealists, but this kind of transaction-driven world also happens to fit the new US system. And I want people to be very globally, I'm sure everyone is, but I want even more awareness that it is going to be strengthened or reinforced in the next at least 4 years. But along with this commercial competition and transaction-driven world, there is a third point I'd like to make, and then I'm going to stop. And then later, if there are questions, I'll be happy to answer. That there is another trend parallel to these two, which is we're moving more and more towards a transnational world. Transnational meaning a new kind of globalization. Look, the world has always had globalization, by the way. Historically, globalization has been through imperial globalization, i.e. through military power, imposing certain influence all over the world. This is what we can think of: the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Persian Empire. All these empires were basically, in their own way, globalized systems, but those were imposed by military force. Today, we have a commercial and information-related globalization where the world is much freer in terms of movement of ideas, goods, services, and lifestyles, all kinds of, there is a globalization of flows of both physical commodities and ideas and lifestyles. And in this transactionalism, a small country can punch way beyond its weight. A small country can have enormous influence. Even if they don't have a large military, even if they don't have a very large GDP to compete with the big guys, they can have a technology-driven, information-driven, and a small country can be at the forefront of this transaction-driven world through their information technology and through their commerce. So it's an interesting trend because as much as small states, it can affect also very large corporations. Today, I can name, I'm sure you can also, many corporations who have more power, more income, more revenue than some small countries. So in that sense, if we take these three trends, the commercial competition between the big players, US, China, India is all here, by the way. It's not just US, China. The main game is between US and China, but there are all these ripple effects that affect a lot of other players. If you take the transaction-driven, no value-driven kind of world, and then superimpose on it this transnational trend that we're seeing around the world, it makes a very interesting and complicated world, actually, in that sense. Now, I don't know how so far this is going to pan out, how long it will last, but this idea, this trend towards transaction-related world has affected some countries already. Okay, the whole way the world treated the ethnic cleansing, or is treating now the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, is one such example. The way the planet Earth is treated the ethnic cleansing of Nagorno-Karabakh in the Southern Caucasus, and this happened in broad daylight, okay, in front of everybody. And here is a perfect example for state interest-driven alliances that created the force to change the reality on the ground. Israel and Azerbaijan have nothing in common in terms of values. Democracy, free press, blah, blah, blah. There's no such thing in Azerbaijan. Israel supposedly has some of these, okay, or at least it's beginning to recognize. They have nothing in common in terms of values, but they have an interest in common. So they came together. Turkey and Azerbaijan also, those two combined created a force that changed reality on the ground in Southern Caucasus and caused a fantastic, incredible, by fantastic I don't mean good, I mean enormous ethnic cleansing of indigenous population from its millennia-old homeland of Nagorno-Karabakh. The same thing is now being planned for Gaza because they got away with it. The first one got away with it, second will get away with it. And in this world, which is driven by transactions and not by human values and not by any of the historical evidence has any value in all this, then in this world, it's kind of winner takes all. It's a very dangerous world. And I never thought that I will myself see the day when at least the United States becomes so transaction driven, but it is. I assure you it is. And what we have seen, some of it will not stand, but some of it will continue. And this trend will continue because there is also don't forget, a domestic trend globally, not just in the US, also in Europe, towards isolationism and towards conservatism in a different way. I think my 10 minutes are up, so I will stop there, and then if there are questions later, I'll be happy to address them.
Thank you, Mr. Zarian. At the end of the day, it was a wise stuff of transaction-driven world, as we have always gone for. Thank you very much for your time. We'll now invite Mr. Abdul Hakim Idris, Executive Director of Yoga Studies in Washington. Mr. Idris, if you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, please.
Yes, I can hear you. Hello?
Yeah, please continue.
Okay. First of all, I thank you for inviting me for this panel. I see my dear friend, Representative Parliament, Member of Parliament, Mr. Kumar. Last time I had the opportunity to meet him in New Delhi. And I'm talking as a, not from theory, from practice. As a neighbor from India, from East Turkestan. Where I born, Hotan City is 900 kilometers away from New Delhi. Beijing is over 3,000 kilometers away. And a Chinese Communist government conducting genocides, forced labor, war on religion, civilizations, and the mostly right now, China is escalating the settler colonization of East Turkestan. When we look recently, as you maybe heard, China is creating two counties of the Hotan City next to Indian border. The aim, Chinese aim is to bring many Han Chinese those areas. China tried to, more than 50 million Han Chinese bring to East Turkestan. Then the Uyghur population and other Turkic population will be minority its own country. And then China is trying to indoctrinate the communistic ideology. Maybe China is representing its nice face in abroad, in a foreign country, as a industry country, like promoting culture, civilization, as they said. But if you look in their China, they are creating a communistic country, communistic ideology. There is no chance for a religion, for other beliefs. Even this is like China tried to bring, like a one nation, one culture, and one ideology, using its surveillance technology. And then we recently saw China used my country, East Turkestan, as a giant field for its technology, IT, medical experiments, and then transporting this oppressive and the surveillance system other countries. Today we can see, like through the Belt Road Initiative in Central Asia, China is pouring with its own cheap electric cars, with its productions, taking over markets in Central Asia, and Central Asian countries becoming dependent on China. We can see, this in Pakistan and in Myanmar and other parts of those areas, and even in Africa. I think this is it represents a global threat for the humanity, for many, the threat for the national security. I can say Chinese approach for the world order. We right now, as I am based in Virginia, many American, European, talking, we have to like a Western and the American elite Western civilization or countries, China's elite countries. But in my opinion, it's like a between democracy and totalitarianism. China is not like aggressive like a Soviet Union. Soviet Union tried to export communism worldwide very aggressively, but it's failed. But China is taking step by step. To look how the China, colonized Tibet, East Turkestan, Southern Mongolian, and turned them. It's it's Han Chinese countries. You can see it's different approach for the world. I think it speaks for the China represent a threat for the world peace, and I think this today many countries can criticize even America. I can see, when I was visited Indonesia, Malaysia, they can criticize America, even European Union. But no countries can criticize China. Why? Because there is a consequence. If you criticize China as a country, as a government, you will lose. If you're a professor, your place at the university. If you are in business, you will lose your place in the business, even in America. So I think this is very important to understand and take the lesson what we were faced as from the Chinese sides as a genocide, education, indoctrinations, and like slave, forced labor sterilizations. Many countries, especially our neighbors on those areas, should take a lesson from us. And we can share this lesson as is. As you know, what happened almost for myself, I lost contact with my family almost 7 years. This genocide actually began in 2014 when the Communist Party's leader Xi Jinping visited the city Kashgar in my country and declared the People's War on Terror. It means People's War on Uyghur nationalities. It's almost 10 years. Millions of people disappeared. Millions of children are, separated from their family, are in the boarding schools. More than 16,000 mosques destroyed, Quran burned. And not just the Muslim countries were silent in this issue. Nobody cares, Like they're talking about theory or something like that, but they become complicit with genocide. When the Islamic OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperations, praised China's treatment of the Uyghurs, you can see how this play in these countries. We can see maybe China has a good relationship with Iran, Saudi Arabia, Central Asian country, and Southeast Asian countries, using its Belt Road Initiative as an export, like a corruptions, destroy the local business and taking over the other countries' wealth. In the meantime, some Western country in America, European Union, some other countries, recognized, even UN recognized what the China's Communist Party did to Uyghurs as a crimes against humanity. Some countries recognized as a genocide, but still there is no actions. Today, China is building its digital wall in my country so massively. You can imagine hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs in diaspora. We cannot communicate with our family because of digital wall. The voice, cannot connect with each other. So this is reality what's happened there. And China tried to change the view strategic of my country. One side, as I said, bring more Han Chinese to East Turkestan, and then transport of Uyghurs to inner China. Then second is, as you know, China is building right now like a big dam in Tibet. This is like a national security issue for the Indian and the Bangladeshi population in Myanmar, because they try to cut the water and bring to our country and bring more Han Chinese. So this is the reality. And because China getting rid of with this its atrocities, because China using it's like a Belt Road Initiative, economic, diplomacy, military, and very aggressive disinformation machinery around the world, and portraying that the Uyghurs are living a happy life and that they are terrorists, separatists, something like that. And even the Uyghurs in the diaspora, we facing more transnational repressions, and even China's hand are reaching us in Western country, and then some Uyghurs in the Turkey. We are under threat all the time. And if you imagine, we have like 48 Uyghur refugees in Thailand prison, almost over 10 years there. 6 people died in Thai prisons. Today, there is a threat. Thailand sent them, those people, back to China. So, as you know, East Turkestan, my country, has border with India. No Uyghur refugee was able to flee to India. If they come to Pakistan, they bring them back. Even not Afghanistan, even today's Taliban government is collaborating with Chinese Communist government. We are not, cannot flee to Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, but some of Uyghurs were able to, through the inner China, flee to Thailand. But Thailand gave them, 10 years ago, 119 Uyghurs back to China, and they are disappeared, tortured, they are dead. Right now, this is 48 people, all over 10 years in my prisons. Thailand, there is a threat to deport them to China. But we actually, asking South Asian countries, especially ASEAN countries, to pressure Thailand to let them out and resettle them in the third countries. This is the tragedy what we are facing, and we are stuck, what we call between democratic Western countries and so-called Muslim majority countries.
Thank you, Mr. Idris.
Muslim majority countries, they say, yeah, America is using Uyghurs against China's rights.
Thank you very much.
And the Western countries say, why are the Muslim countries not supporting you? So this is the tragic situation what we are facing. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Tragic
Idris. Of course.
situation what we are facing, but we are not giving up, and we, as a Uyghur community around the world,
we are running short of time.
Around the world, try to bring our voice, our documentation, our reports, and share with other countries, so they can, pressure China and end this genocide for the Uyghurs and take enough lessons
Sir,
from
we are
them.
running short out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Idris. To know, it was a good delving point on the Chinese designs. And now we're off to Taiwan here. Mr. Adil Brar, senior journalist and writer. I think Adil will take some time to start off. Meanwhile, we come back physically now. A lot has gone on the from the online perspective. Can I now request Dr. Rajiv Nayan to please share your
Can I
thoughts?
speak from here?
Yeah, you can speak from there.
Okay, wonderful. First of all, I would like to thank Red Lantern Analytica. I can see young people. I can see many young people here, and it really gives me challenge. I think second or third time I am coming on their platform, and I am always enthused. It gives me extra energy to talk to youngsters on this platform. And the moment I was told to speak, I said, yes, it's great. So, starting with the chair of the session, Dr. Sen, old friend, and Sri Honorable Member of Parliament, Sri Sujit Kumarji, Ambassador KP Fabian, my very old friend, Mayank Singh ji. It was a pleasant surprise for me. यार, इसको थोड़ा कम करो. Pleasant surprise for me. And of course, the organizers, Dr. Mr. whatever, Mr. Siddharth Ghosh. So thank you very much and all for inviting me. यार एकदम ही बंद कर दिए. Okay, am I audible to the last? Okay, wonderful. So I have been given a very challenging task to talk on arms control and disarmament in an era of, I say, Donald Trump. This is a Trumpian era. There is no doubt about that. So since there are many young minds, young students sitting over here, so what I will do, and there are four or five questions given to me, and chair has been kind to me, and he said, okay, you also do the hybridization of all the questions, merge them all, and have something in 10 minutes. So this is another challenge to do that. So, but let me start with that. Arms control and disarmament. The first question which has been provided to me, could they provide or could they help or facilitate international security? It's a wonderful question. So what then India has also been put in, so I'll come to India also. So arms control, it is just the idea, what is arms control and disarmament? Very simple. Simple English. Arms control means reduction of armaments. And disarmament means complete disarmament of the armaments. It's very simple, but it is not that simple. Why it is not that simple? Because of international politics and strategic studies. The great power, politics, when they don't have to disarm, then they call arms control disarmament. If you read many of the reports coming up in recent years, when they talk about disarmament, they just talk about arms control. So this is one politics which we are facing today. I'm not saying Trumpian era, I'm in pre-Trumpian era also. This is the American era in 21st century. This is first. So then I go back to the origin. English is fine, but once you talk about the discipline, and I can see many students here, it all started in the Cold War period. Okay? And it was part of general strategy studies. And who was the person who really became the champion? Can anyone tell me? Halperin, and Morton Halperin, and Thomas Schelling. So they had to struggle. Why they had to struggle? Because they are struggling with the old frameworks, old notions, old values, which were driving, or which had driven international politics. What were those things? They were balance of power, arms race. So now it was an age of nuclear weapons, and they had to fit in nuclear weapons in this framework, and they found it's a difficult task. You cannot have balance of power with nuclear arms. So then, gentlemen later, much later in 60s, called Albert Hallstatter. He called it balance of terror. So now in balance of terror, how are you going to regulate the system? How you are going to manage stability? You cannot fight war. So long period of, say, tense peace existed during the Cold War. The entire idea, the entire process, our entire thinking was to somehow regulate this system. So the arms control basically was meant for regulating the international arms race. Once Raymond Aron had told this is an alliance of superpowers against nuclear weapons. Because nuclear weapons were devastating for all. That they realized that you cannot fight a nuclear war. So this was the situation. So this arms control came in. And there are many theoreticians, there are many others. So what did they do? They provided stability to nuclear deterrence. They did not do nuclear disarmament. What another thing they did, they just helped. All major arms control, if you see it, all came in either in 70s, 71, 72, or when there was a relative, say, peace, or what we called at that time, Detan period. So when we have got an understanding, or you struggle to have an understanding in the international system, only then you can have some arrangements. So these are just arrangements. Arrangements, so are they contributing to peace? Yes, but tense peace. Not a complete long-term peace existed in international system because of arms control. So what is situation now? Let me move back or move forward, fast forward. No one is bothered for arms control now. Only dominant arms control treaty which is existing is New START treaty. Even it is at the brink of crisis. When it was extended for 5 years, no one believed that it would be extended for 5 years. Because there was no sympathy. It was just for formality, this treaty was extended. What is happening now? So this was bilateral arrangement, predominantly. I'm saying, Angrezi mein kuch nahi hai. There is nothing left in English. Arms control could be anything. But once you talk in terms of practice, diplomatic practice or strategic studies issue, then you will have to see it differently. When you see it differently, then you will find that it was a bilateral superpower phenomenon between, at that time, Soviet Union and United States, or you can say between the capitalist bloc or the socialist bloc. So what is happening? New power is emerging. When INF, Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces, that treaty, when I had joined my MA, that time it was concluded in 1987. And if you read, if you go back, you must read some archival materials. You'll find there was lots of rejoice at that time. Oh, new disarmament, because certain categories of weapons were simply eliminated in INF. But now they feel that we require those weapons. So this is the beauty of arms control. They can reverse the process. Anti-ballistic missile treaty has been reversed, finished. INF has been finished. So what is new trend which is emerging? The new trend is that the attempt is being made to make it from bilateral to at least trilateral. I am saying at least trilateral. Again, there is global politics coming in. What is that global politics? China doesn't want to, now this China's platform, China doesn't want to join these trilateral initiatives. So if you see all the major ballistic, I am part of Missile Dialogue Initiative proposed by IISS and supported by German government. Nowhere they are willing to join this treaty or any initiative. They say, you too have it, I am staying away from it. Because they know this is just to constrain China. Because all their rivals are around, and of course there are many outside it also. So it doesn't want to join short range or even intermediate range arrangements. So this is one. Second is that Trump is not paying even lip service to it. He's forget about nuclear disarmament. Nuclear disarmament is no one is talking about. So this is the world where we are existing now. So what to do? So, but could there be any arms exchange on war, nuclear war between countries? In Ukraine, we heard noises were made, and these noises have got importance in international system. What are they called? In our sub-discipline, we call it signaling. You signal, you try to use it as a bargaining chip. When did Putin used it? When there was enormous pressure coming on Russia, that okay, so then say, okay, we are going to use it. And sometimes he just flashed that, okay, so we have mobilized 1/3 of forces. In reality, 1/3 of forces are always on alert. So, but this information, this is related to information warfare also, knowledge, information system. You are releasing information at an appropriate time. And then what you do? Yes, you try to influence. So, what America did, US tried to do, it wanted to use it an exercise of international public opinion making against Russia. So you'll find many of the, I had written an article, you can read it it is put on IDSA website. Like there are 3 paragraphs which Putin had spoken. And these 3 paragraphs, you'll find that what happened, even our media used that. Even NDTV to the other news sites, you can say, or newspapers, you can say. What they did, they just cut half of one sentence, not forget about even cutting the paragraph. And it projected that, oh, Putin is going to use it. So I said that if just sentences are just changed or selectively released, you will find 3 nuclear doctrines coming from from Russia. So this is what has been done. This is entire optics. This is an exercise. Nobody is using it. So like it or not, it is a stark reality. There is no disarmament, but at the same time, there is a nuclear taboo. What Nina Tannenwald has used the term, nuclear taboo existing in the world. Even if you don't fear nuclear reprisals, you are not using it against America. Despite being a great superpower, you can say, but you not find it even talking about using nuclear weapons against weaker power. So this is the stark reality existing in the international system about nuclear disarmament, or you can say nuclear weapons. So this is what is happening. Now I fast come, because I have limited time, fast come on India, how India is approaching. Even India is not talking about nuclear arms control. It is not in our interest. We have been we are a reluctant entrant to this club. Let us call it a club. It was a club. We did not want. We championed for nuclear disarmament for years, and we failed in our campaign. Let us admit it also. But despite failing, or despite taking care of our security, and we had to go nuclear, there were circumstances existing at that time. And one of the situation was that there was transactions taking place between Pakistan and China, and we had to take care of that. Second was NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which was given indefinite extension. Means you are just literally giving the right to purchase nuclear weapons to only 5 countries. The rest are just nuclear have-nots. So, and we had problem with one of the nuclear 5 countries, that was China. And China was not very benign as it projects itself. China was time and again just somehow intimidating our soldiers stationed, or our troops are stationed at the border. So we did not want to be at the mercy of any power. So then we also had to go nuclear. But even after going nuclear, we did not renounce the goal of a nuclear weapons-free world. We kept championing for it. We kept talking about nuclear weapons convention, like chemical weapons convention or biological weapons convention. Second thing is that we negotiated, or you can say we somehow engaged with many of the regimes or many of the arrangements which we had opposed, or which were opposed to even at the time of going nuclear. So then what happened? Non-proliferation, although the term non-proliferation was given by us, and Western powers were using the term spread, nuclear spread. So in United Nations, we had also put forward our resolution, but unfortunately, Irish resolution was Irish resolution became the negotiating document, and NPT was, of course, created or concluded after that. So but for long period, for decades, we had got very troubling, tense relationship with non-proliferation term and NPT in particular. So then we started supporting the idea of the norm of non-proliferation, and we engaged or we accepted many of the components of non-proliferation. Not all. NPT, of course, we did not become a member of NPT, but we said that we will not be a party to destroy NPT. If NPT falls or NPT collapses, it will be because of its merit or demerit. So this is NPT is dead, but still the world is being ruled in the name of NPT. So this is no country, despite criticizing it, leaves NPT. So this is another irony of this treaty. So this is how it is moving. So we did not want to have any kind of destabilization in the international system. That's why we did not oppose NPT. Okay, you are a member, you please comply it. That's why we had voted on Iran. You have signed a treaty, you have got right to access to nuclear energy, but you should comply with the treaty and do not have nuclear. You should not have nuclear weapons. So this is what our strategy has been, stabilizing the system, even if it is called NPT system, of which we are not a party. So this is how we have managed the system. Now in the Trumpian area, what could happen? It is very interesting times. I'll say that there will be no nuclear disarmament for coming 4 years at least. There will be no even talk about this nuclear disarmament. There will be no talk about arms control. There will be not even talk about non-proliferation. There could be period of preemptive strike, but he has thrown a surprise at Mr. Trump, and he offered the dialogue with Iran that we can revive JCPOA, joint the comprehensive plan of action. So that is surprising. And in last tenure also, he was very nice to North Korea. So this is what Trump can do. He can have bilateral exchanges because he is a businessman, good businessman. He doesn't want to bring about instability in the system. So last 1 minute, okay. So yes, of course, there will be uncertainty existing in the world. And this uncertainty could be good and could be bad also. It could be good, but this is my prediction, my assessment. Once it is going to affect the global trade or global business, Trump will have many faces. So he promised to impose 100% tax on China, but he just imposed 10%. And he just imposed 25% on his own friends, neighbors, allies. And again, he just somehow suspended those sanctions. So he knows business. Once I told in one of my television interviews that he is Sammi Kapoor of American politics. He uses madness. He uses madness as a style. And he knows how to use it. So he knows how to use chaos. He is creating chaos in the international system. And he will have best rules out of it for American. So this is what he is not a fool. If you read Post-Square, Post-Wall book written by one Delhi, London School of Economics professor, brilliant book, beautiful book. In the very first chapter, you'll find how he had engaged when this was Cold War and how he engaged Gorbachev. And he wanted to sell his prime property and he was showing interest even in Russia. How he can do business in Russia at that time. So he is a businessman. So he will do business and just see, he knows he has power. And he knows how to use this power. So that's why I'm saying it will be very interesting. It's good, bad, but we'll have to be very watchful. We'll have to be on alert. We don't know what will happen, but whatever happen, we have to make somehow best use of it. So because still we have become powerful, everything is fine, third largest economy we are going to become, but we cannot influence all the happenings. Some happenings of the world can be influenced by us, but let us be realistic. We cannot just shape the happenings in the world. So we have to understand dynamics of the world. Somewhere we can work with Russia, with China, sometimes to tame Trump's paradox, all madness. At the same time, we have to work with him also, so that it doesn't affect us. So, plus Europeans are in the forefront. has got a contingency plan ready to confront Trump's or to retaliate against Trump's so-called tariff regime. So similarly, in other areas it may also come. So we have to be ready. So we should not sit with any theory. Your theories are good, charming, nice to hear, but realities are very, very tough. So we have to be reality oriented. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajiv. It was really a Trump session. Anyway, thank you very much. Now I'd request Ambassador KB Fabian to please share your thoughts.
You want this one, sir? Okay.
No. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sen, Honorable Member of Parliament, Shri Sujit Kumar, and dear neighbor, Dr. Rajiv Nayan, and Mr. Mayank Singh. First of all, congratulations to Red Lantern Analytica for organizing this. But at the same time, we learned that arms control is difficult, but time control is even more difficult. Now, just to make it interactive, we got a good class in disarmament. Let's pursue it further, but very briefly. Disarmament and non-armament. Disarmament means you get rid of what you have. Non-armament means you do not make what you have the capability to make. Now, this is a concept which my ambassador, Vishnu Trivedi, explained way back in Geneva. But I don't think we hear much about it. And then about proliferation. Two types. Horizontal. When a new power state acquires nuclear weapons, say Iran, horizontal. But when America and Soviet Union, Russia increase what they have, vertical proliferation. And that is happening now, as already pointed out. President Trump wants to militarize space. And AI, we all hear about regulation of AI, but let us be frank, there is no move to regulate the use of AI in the military sphere. Now, so glad to be with this young audience. A question, how many of you want to join the Foreign Service? Good, welcome. Because I do, well, there will be more, maybe after this session. Okay, now the theme I was told to speak is global concerns. Now, let me put it this way. Humanity is not having a Amrit Kal. It's pretty bad. Let's face it. There is a genocidal war in West Asia. There is a ceasefire, which is very fragile. We don't know what might happen. And President Trump, you said he's a businessman. Let us be more precise. He is a real estate tycoon.
Yes.
And he speaks of the Riviera in Gaza, the Mediterranean. Well, I'm not into sort of predicting things, But I'll be surprised if there will be Trump towers in Gaza. He's planning, but he might be chasing a mirage. But the problem is that when the most powerful man under the moon chases a mirage, there can be dreadful consequences. That is what we have to figure out. Now, another war, Amrit Kal, not Amrit Kal, Ukraine. Saint Augustine, long time ago, you can have two varieties of wars, necessary and avoidable. The Bangladesh war was a necessary war, but most of the other wars are avoidable. And the Ukraine war was certainly avoidable. Why did it happen? NATO expansion. Contrary to the promise given at the time of the collapse of the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union agreed to the German unification. And President Biden made President Zelensky believe that Ukraine can get into the NATO. Now, Biden, with his long experience, should have known better, but probably he wanted a war. Why? He thought that Russian ruble will become rubble. And there will be destabilization and Putin will be unseated. And Russia, the biggest country in the world, can be divided. Its mineral wealth. Anyway, that was a mirage which Biden pursued. Let me move fast. The trade war which Trump has started, trade war is a war which nobody will win. You will only mutually destroy each other. And the IMF has made a, assessment. If there is a global trade war, the loss to the GDP, world GDP, will be $7.4 trillion. You can add up the GDP of France and Germany. It is roughly the same. Now, ICC, International Criminal Court, sanctions against it. 80 countries have condemned President Trump's move. Now, climate change. January 2025, the average temperature was 1.75 degrees Celsius. You know the Paris Agreement? 1.5? You have forgotten that, no? I mean, not forgotten intellectually, but practically. So, there we are. Now, United States, where the per capita, carbon emission is 16 tons, 1/6. And Trump has decided to walk out. Now, it will have two consequences. One is that ideologically bent countries or political leaders who want to please Trump by imitating him will walk out. Another is even countries which understand it, they will say, and Indonesia has already said, according to the BBC, if a country with per capita emission of 16 tons is not in it, why should I, with 3 tons, be in it? So that is where we are. Now, what can we do about it? Well, perhaps, we should recognize that the COP, Conference of Parties, useful, but by and large a charade. Words, 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 words. Deeds, none. Differential responsibility, these rich countries have the historical responsibility for having polluted the environment. They spoke about differential responsibility, but they are not doing what they promised to do in terms of technical and financial assistance to the global south. So what can we do? I just put across to you a thought. Let there be a conference of civilizations, inter-civilizational conference, where governments will be there, academia will be there, think tanks will be there like Red Lantern Analytica, civil society will be there, and corporate bodies will be there, and religious leaders, cultural leaders. And let us discuss it and let us see whether we can put pressure. You see? Now, it has been great speaking with all of you because the interventions from New York and Washington and the presence of Deputy Representative from Taiwan, Robert, make it really international. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Fabio. I think we are now joined by Adil. Is Adil there? Adil Brar, a journalist and writer in Taiwan. Adil, please go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you to Red Lantern for inviting me. I'm sure you've heard to some of the great speakers already. So let me jump in and talk about the moment we are in. At the moment, we are in this very difficult scenario where we had the re-election of US President Donald Trump. And with the re-election of President Donald Trump, we've seen a new kind of geopolitical environment which will create new scenarios for India that India has to respond to. And my talk is primarily going to be about China. So looking at China, we've seen that China is facing tough economic environment with US imposing certain sanctions on the semiconductor business. And US has made it fairly difficult for China to access some of these high-end AI chips. But with the release of DeepSeek AI model that we saw earlier this year, China has also proven that they have a kind of tool to actually challenge the US back by accessing these chips through, certain sources like in Singapore and elsewhere. So China was able to kind of break free of the kind of Biden administration's challenges that were imposed on Beijing. So this that China may be facing some steep challenges, but they can definitely get out of these kind of stiff tariffs that were imposed on them in terms of the semiconductor business. And this is only happening because Xi Jinping articulated a certain agenda for the people there. He spoke about that China needs to move into a new direction now. China needs to develop its own high-tech industry. He spoke about, innovation and growth. So these are the ideas that he had actually started discussing back in 2013. And now we are seeing some of the results with the DeepSeek AI model that China can innovate despite facing difficult challenges from the US. And with the DeepSeek model, we will see more so of these new innovations coming up despite the restrictions imposed by the US. So speaking of that movement, we see Donald Trump is definitely going to impose further tariffs, as we have already seen with the 10% tariffs that were imposed. But what is more interesting is that despite all of that, China's economy still continues to grow, and they have a certain size in the world system now that they can still sustain despite all the restrictions from major powers around the world. So which means that for us here in India or around the world, it would be something that we need to keep in mind that Beijing cannot be written away. Beijing has a heft, it has a ability to fight back and jump back into the global system. So, and China's own economy and the size is now moving forward in a certain direction that it can generate, at least if it even generates like a 3% growth on a yearly basis, that is enough to, remain one of the second largest economy in the world. So some of the commentary online, talking about China, its economy facing challenges, I personally don't believe that, because they have a certain size in the global system that will remain enduring over the years, and India will have to respond to that. And it's now that we see China is even more confident with the re-election of Donald Trump, that China feels that the internal politics in the US will
I think you just. So I think we'll have to go ahead because there's some time constraints. Can I now invite Mr. Mayank Singh to please share your thoughts?
Good afternoon, everyone. And to begin with, I'm sorry I got late because there was some medical requirement at my home. So I beg your pardon for getting late here. But then in time for whatever I had to say. And it's very interesting to talk about media and that too today. And with the kind of presence of you people who might be accessing not the print editions, but the online editions. And to an extent, I can say that you might not even know the reporters who write and whom you might be reading. That is just an idea that whether do you understand whether the person who is writing, he's a credible journalist or not. That's the kind of challenge we are facing. And it's not about the credibility factor. Let's introduce the aspects of diplomacy, military, and security into it when it comes to media. Terms like information warfare, which Dr. Nayan used, they are the reality of the day. And when we meet in congregations like this, we pick up terms, at least students pick up terms for their connotations, for expansion, and for better understanding. So when you say hybrid warfare, when you say no war, no peace, what are these actually? And why am I as a media person talking about them? But then I began, as I said, is it also a credibility factor for the media? I'll begin with an example. How many have you seen the photograph of Kim Jong-un?
Taiwan as well as South China Sea. And I would say India-China border tensions are very much
can that be
linked
just-
with what's going on at the
Yeah, please.
in the Taiwan Strait, as well as the South China Sea. Because he talked about a chain
Okay, just let him complete, please.
border very much remains tied to what happens in Taiwan Strait. So China will maintain its forces at the India-China border because it has to make sure that it does not see any reaction at the India-China border when things go live in the Taiwan Strait. So part of its strategy to create this new normal at the border is going to be is going to result in a long-term presence of these soldiers at the border. So in my personal view, India is facing a tough challenge within its neighborhood vis-a-vis neighbors like Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, who find China's model, China's narrative on development quite convincing. They see that China has an alternative model to offer vis-a-vis what New Delhi has to offer. So they are quite convinced with accepting, new aid and new forms of assistance from Beijing. So with this neighborhood, there is a broader order that's emerging where China is carving out a space for itself, despite facing all the challenges that it does. And it will continue to push outside, whether it is in the South China Sea or the Taiwan Strait, as well as at the India-China border. So these contingencies are linked in a scenario where Xi wants to secure the broader neighborhood of China. And that is why they are acting in the way they are. And in my personal opinion, some of these patrolling pacts that have been announced in recent days are not going to result in a long-term solution to the border. So China seems to be winning the broader media narrative by setting a tone of how its order will emerge in the region. And that is why India has a tough environment coming ahead with the re-election of Donald Trump, Chinese economy sustaining over the long run. And these two factors will create economic as well as geopolitical challenges that need to be addressed on a case-to-case basis. A limited rapprochement with Beijing would be something that would be desirable, but it would not result in an entire reset that some have discussed in media. So we need to be vigilant about what this rapprochement means and how far will we go with resetting the relations and what will be the terms of that reset. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Adil. Yeah, Mr. Singh, if you can just go ahead now.
So like Adil also is using that same new term narrative, and media is a significant part of or tool of or instrument of state also, of the governments, of the nations, of the countries. So let us thread by thread understand what is happening, maybe in quick 5-10 minutes, and then what can be the solution. I asked you a question just to make my point further, which is how many of you have seen the photograph of Kim Jong-un? And do you know who has provided those photographs? Exactly. So today when you go, it's a sort of a homework just to open further your mindset about it. None of them, most of them, almost none of them. Since the last journalist who visited from India to that country was in early 80s. So who's providing those photographs? If somebody is providing those photographs and Indian media is doing half an hours and specials, where from those videos are coming? And if they are coming, that means somebody else is wanting to show what is to be shown. That's number one. Do you have a tool to put across your points across the world? Let me narrate or let me count the tools which you use. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, WhatsApp, or any of them are, do you think, Indian? Okay. Do you have any channel which is international? My entire talk is for India and about India, actually. So we tried to start a channel called WION, but that has remained constrained to South Asia. Now let's bring in Ukraine-Russia war. Then we'll talk about China also. Judicially, means courts of Europe, they stopped relay of any video which was coming from RT. RT was banned, Russian television. So do you think that entire narrative, whether it was YouTube, whether it was Twitter or any of the other mediums, except for Telegram, none of them were relaying any video from that side? So was it balanced coverage? Bring that case to India. If tomorrow somebody wants, if you don't have a tool to relay your point across internationally, will you be able to relay? Point number 2. Point number 3, is Indian media investing in its own journalists? So let me tell you, most of the organizations, they have stopped, or rather they are moving away from field reportings. If they are moving away from field reporting, then 1965 when B.G. Varghese Hindu was co-opted to form the premier institution of India, which is IDSA, he was part of the executive. And today, till today, there's an old veteran journalist, Mr. Luthra, who is permanent member of the committee of the IDSA. After that, there's none. Because the journalists who were writing about policy, about your country, they were deep diving. They used to reflect the ground. And if it is not happening today, the entire country is losing that. So I told you, somebody from sitting outside can put in ingest a video which can create problem in Tamil Nadu, having an international repercussion, which is in India and Sri Lanka relationship. Something can happen in West Bengal, having an international repercussion between India and Bangladesh. India and Sri Lanka there. Do you understand the significance of media? Now let's come to China. So when you talk to people who attend the border talks, which is WMCC, or SHMCL, which is Core Commander talks, they tell that the first thing the Chinese, when they come, representatives, they say, "Aap apni media ko control kyun nahi karte?" Which is in their language. Why don't you control your media? Do you understand the difference of governance? So a country which has a different form of a governance, it can control its media, not a democracy. But India being a democracy, don't you have weaknesses which I have already narrated? So if you have structural weaknesses, that can create problem for you in future. Develop your own tools. Investment into field reporting has to come back. And that we as media organizations have to take the responsibility for that. I have to quote an example of 2013. A new channel, television channel starts. A representative from that channel, we were sitting in South Block. That person comes to South Block and introduces to the officials that "Main Fala Fala, and I'll be covering national security, defense and MEA for this channel." I'm not quoting this channel and that channel and the person. And next day, Agni missile was test fired. That young person, the next day, was standing at the ramparts of South Block talking about India-China relations. Just one day prior, that person has joined Ministry of Defense to cover. That can also be a problem. So are you really, as masses, critical? Because I see you people are students and developing your own thought processes, attending such seminars and workshops so as to pick up seeds. Ideas rule the world. And if ideas rule the world, then you need to have seeds, vocabulary, terms, and experts like these talking to you people. In 2013, it hits me because I spoke to a name called B.G. Verghese. So I tried to study my own fraternity, media. That how much? 1984, Goldwater Nichols, which changed the entire Ministry of Defense of US. Ministry of Defense UK, it also changed because certain journalists, they were writing about the policies there. So when I go back and I try to study my own fraternity, the books became a sort of a study for me because I was scanning through the books which were being written by the people. Most of them are biographical about their experiences, not about the policies. Have we stopped investing into field reporting? I said before. Media is very, very important, as I said. Let's bring in social media now. So with AI tools, you can make Taliban, which is destroying the music instruments, sing and dance. And that video, if planted smartly, in a planned manner, can create chaos world over. Media, narrative, information warfare. So as people who have discerning minds, you have to be cautious, conscious, and active. If you are mediocre, then you will be mediocre. But if you have to improve, you will have to be special. You have to invest in yourself. Media needs to invest in itself. Media is important, and India, as a great country, as a great nation, has to invest into media. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Well, we are well ahead of our time now. So, if there are any questions for our guests, please quickly.
Good afternoon, sir. Myself, Ashish Gupta. I'm from Amity University, pursuing my master's in IR. So, my question to you is you highlighted the point of the Western media and their dominance, predominance over the aspect of information warfare and the dominance they hold over the world. So, can it be said that due to this and due to their effect on the world, wherein the information that they provide has so much impact on the world, there has been multiple instances where they have misused this. So doesn't it demean their credibility in a sense that who will believe them, wherein the world knows how they have misused this information? Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Thank you, Ashish, for asking that question. It's a matter of choices. So let's say tomorrow, in terms of food, a very simple example, then we can go up to the higher narratives. So if you have, in terms of food, let's say you have limited choices, you will have to pick up from them, good or bad. Coming to media, as I said, we have not created an international setup wherein we can, these are all vehicles and tools by which you take out your aspects, your narratives, not narrative, perspective, your own opinions and views. So if you don't have an option to take away that, take ahead that, you will have to take in whatever is given to you. And on that, then you will apply your own discerning mind, whether that's right or wrong. Coming another example, because you are all are students and you need to have examples from ground. That was 15th of June, I believe, Galwan happened. Or maybe we go back to Balakot. That point is important because when Galwan happened, maybe systemically the things happen like this. Reuters, BBC, and international channels, they were quoting the MFA of China. And we took time till 2:30 in the afternoon to come out with our views. How does it affect? It needs to be understood. So let's say morning, an official source, which is MFA of China, says that this is our aspect. So as a media person, you will quote that officials are saying this. We are waiting for the views from the other side. So till 2:30, the entire world is full of views from one side. And when you come at 2:30, you're reacting to situation. So your point is a reaction, actually. Somebody has taken the lead. So perhaps Nayan sir or Ambassador Fabian again talked about timely intervention, bringing out the information in time. So one, you don't have options to take out or to give to the international your views. Then there are choices which are presented from somebody else. And in that also you're getting late. Three things together. Logically, you can understand how it affects. Narratives, Adil was talking. 10th of May, when I broke that surreal line of actual control, I got calls from everywhere. 10th of May 2020, at 12:30, I broke that story. But in timely intervention is very, very important, provided you have institutions. XP is one of the best setup which has been created by the ME of our country. One of the best institutionalized, sansthagat, that is very important. Ministry of Defense, it is expanding. It is creating tools now. But you all can see institutionally, Twitter and YouTube have been co-opted by our government, institutionally, by order that every institution will have its own Twitter account and a YouTube channel. Ashish, I hope I'm able to do justice to you.
Thank you so much for the insightful answer, sir. Due to time consideration, we'll be moving on with the plan ahead. Requesting Dr. Ainzit sir to deliver his closing
Well, I
remarks.
think we're well ahead of time.
Thank you so
But
much.
I hope all of you enjoyed the session, and I must thank Sujit Kumar sir, because your one was, I would definitely say from the Indian government standpoint and from an Indian standpoint, as an Indian, I think the way we have gone ahead vis-a-vis what the situation was 20, 25 years back, because I can say from my own experience back in Pakistan and Pakistan occupied Kashmir, where some of you know already, but the situation out there at that point of time vis-a-vis right now has completely changed. And the first case was back in some 24 years back from now, more than 2 decades, nearly 2.5 decades, when I crossed over with the help of Taliban, the same Taliban who's against now, slowly the relations are mending. But the interesting facet here is that the POK at that point of time, vis-a-vis the POK now, you would definitely find a slurge of Indian people really asking, oh God, why were we with Pakistan so long? It's time for us to be with India, because otherwise, economically, from all aspects, they are doomed, and I have seen it with my own eyes. So nothing goes beyond this. It's not I've read. It's not about reading or anything. It's about from my own with my own eyes. And so from that perspective, I think overall, as Dr. Nayan sir, of course, I must say, you really blew the trumpet. It was really good, sir. And the way the arms conflict, so to say, if I may say that perspective, was so well put by sir. In fact, I must say, normally when it comes to military conversations, we are, this term, what does this mean? That term, what does that mean? But sir's, entry into the particular, the way the explanation went, what I must say, all of you students out here would have really understood the jinx, because it's very important from that perspective that the arms proliferation and the way the historical part was intertwined by you. I must say, sir, thank you very much for this. And of course, Mr. Singh, journos, so we can definitely put hands together. But I think the best part was the social media aspect that you put forward, I think. And, starting from Twitter, and Twitter, of course, I would say is the bandwagon. That's where it is basing its, all the stuff that needs to go out at the right place at the right time is done through that. But remember one very important aspect. We cannot sit back and wait for action to happen. The problem is we are a bit stifle late. That stifle late is within quotation mark, because international relation perspective, you cannot be even a 0.01 second late on this. And that is something which, from an Indian standpoint, India is going good, but there are still there are still ways in which India can go ahead and definitely make the changes, because from an AI perspective, from a technology perspective, we are number one in the world. So why not then we are pushing it beyond what we can do? And I think we can. Communication is our forte at the end of the day. We, centuries back, we started off that, if we take it from that perspective. Anyway, so I'll not take more time now, but thank you very much for hearing our eminent guests and, of course, tolerating me for some time. So thanks a ton. Thank you very much. So can we take one picture? Take picture. One. Come.
Audience can stand here.